Hello. Since there were some disruptions during the class, I will re-record the contents once again. So, this class we will discuss about design thinking and various stages. So, what is design thinking? Design thinking is a non-linear iterative process that design teams use to understand users, challenge assumptions, redefine problems, and create innovative solutions to prototype and finally to test. So it is a non-linear iterative process. Iterative process means that the different stages will be repeated. We will see various stages. So this design thinking involves 5 stages: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. So it is most useful to tackle problems that are ill-defined or unknown. In the sense, when the user requirements are not clear, or we are not very clear about what is to be developed and how it should be developed, how a product should be developed, design thinking and its various stages will help you get a clarity on the user requirements and finally to design the project which suits a particular requirement. So the introduction of this the concept of design thinking. So way back in 1969, cognitive scientist and Nobel Prize laureate Herbert A. Simon introduced a book called The Sciences of the Artificial, in which he mentioned about design thinking. So nowadays, 21st century organizations from a wide range of industries find design thinking a valuable means to problem solve for the users of their products and services. Design teams use design thinking to tackle ill-defined or unknown problems because they can reframe these in human-centric views and focus on what is most important for users. Reframe in the sense, reframe the problem in human-centric ways, because when we want to develop a particular product, we should think from the user's perspective or user's point of view. Otherwise, things will not be effective. In the sense, a user need a particular software. So what we will do, we will first have to talk to the user, think from his point of view, his perception, so that what he really needs in the software. What are the different features? How interface should be? What the database should be? All those things should be very clear as far as the user requirements are concerned. So reframe the problem in human-centric ways. That is what human-centric. The focus is on the users. Focus is on the human beings who ultimately use this, who ultimately needs this product. So this design process will help you to think outside the box. Some of the world's leading companies, such as Apple, Google, Samsung, and General Electric, they have adopted this design thinking in their innovative process. Also, major universities in the world, such as Stanford, Harvard, MIT, they all are teaching the design thinking as a part of their curriculum. So that indicates the importance of the concept of design thinking in the current scenario. The overall goal of this design thinking is to help you design better products, services, processes, strategies, space, architecture, and experience. So the design thinking is not only for designing a particular product. It can be anything. Like when you design something, when you design a room. See, for example, we all design, arrange things in our room, in our kitchen, in our living room, isn't it? In our dining room. So that is also part of design, no? That's also design. So that way design thinking will help you design better products, services, and whatever. So design thinking helps you and your team develop practical and innovative solutions for your problems. So again, it is a human focused. The focus is on the human being, focus is on the people who really use the product, and it is prototype driven. And in the sense, you will first have a prototype, and then we will test the prototype, then we will take the feedback whether the prototype is working correctly or something needs to be changed in the design. Then we will go back to the design again, and so that then we will modify the design. That is why the design thinking is an iterative process, isn't it? It's a flexible process. In the sense, it's not a linear process, but it is a non-linear process. So this design thinking can be used in different fields such as literature, art, music, science, engineering, and business. Not only for designers but also for creative employees, freelancers, and business leaders. So everywhere in our designs, in our businesses, in countries, and in our lives, everywhere the design thinking can be used. Basically, it is an approach for devising solutions to various problems. The problem may be faced by individual, problem may be faced within a business, or maybe faced by countries or all countries globally. Say, for example, global warming, how to reduce carbon emission, carbon footprint. That's an issue faced by all human beings, all countries in the world. So even then, to find a solution for that problem also, you can think of design thinking at its various stages. So it is a solution-based approach where the focus is on human needs, and brainstorming sessions, discussions, and prototyping and testing are important there. So the different stages of the design thinking, if you look at the Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design at Stanford University describes design thinking as a five-stage process. So this D School is the leading university in the world which teaches the design thinking. So the different stages, the five stages are not always sequential. That means one stage does not follow always after the previous stage, and of teams often run these different stages in parallel or in out of order and repeat them in as many number as possible, and often in an iterative fashion. So that is a flexibility. So this is the picture which shows the various stages in the design thinking. Say it shows five stages: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and finally the test phase. So this is a non-linear process in the sense arrows are shown. One set of arrows shows, starts from empathize to define, define to ideate, ideate to prototype, prototype to test. But it need not be always in that sequence. Say, for example, from the test, if you find that test to create new ideas for the product, then you can go back to the ideate stage and modify your ideas. Or from the prototype, we can even go back to ideate stage by learning from the prototypes, which may spark new ideas. Or from the test, you can learn about users and you can modify the empathize, or you can go back to the empathize stage, something like that. So that is why it is a non-linear process. The different stages are not sequential. They can be run in a parallel fashion. They can be run in different order and in as many number as possible. So it's an iterative process. So first stage of this design thinking is empathize. So what is empathize? Probably you would understand the difference between sympathy and empathy. Empathy is a higher degree. So in empathy, or when you empathize with somebody, when you sympathize with somebody, what happens? You know that when you sympathize with your friend, what happens? You know that he is worried. Yeah, we will say, oh my God, it's very bad that this happened to you. That's all. But when you empathize with him, no, you step into his shoes, so you look the things from his perspective. You start to feel the pain as it is yours pain. So something like that. So when you feel like that, the pain felt by somebody else is yours. Then you will start, thinking or working towards solving that, something like that. So that is empathy. The empathy is a higher degree. So in this case, the first stage of the design thinking process is empathize. Research your users needs. You need to understand the your users needs. So you want to develop a product, you want to design a software, but what are the requirements of the users? So we should look from their point of view. Empathetic understanding of the problem, that is through user research. That is user research. So you have to set aside your own assumptions about the world and gain real insight into users and their needs. You will have to set aside your assumptions. Means sometimes when somebody comes to you and asks for a software or design a mobile app, you will have certain assumptions about how a mobile app should be, or how a website should be, really, because you might be an experienced designer, experienced programmer. So you have a set of convictions and assumptions about how it should be, but that may limit your imagination or limit your creativity or productivity, because you need to actually understand the user's requirement. So what actually he needs. So he what he needs might not be exactly what is there in your mind. So better understanding the requirement of the user is really important. For that, you set aside yourself. You have to start from the scratch, or you have to start from the point of view of a beginner, in the sense, even though you may be an experienced person, but you will have to listen to that person. You'll have to have some serious discussion with with the user to understand his problems or requirements. So that involves consulting experts, so empathizing with people. So finally, what is the ultimate result? Deeper personal understanding of the issues. Why do you need deeper personal understanding of the issues faced by the people? Only then you can have a better design and better solution. So a substantial amount of information is gathered at this stage, at this empathize stage, to use that can be used during the next stage to develop the best possible solutions. So there are three different steps which can be used for empathizing. First one, observe. Second one, engage. And third one, immerse. Now observe what happens. You carefully look at how users interact with their environment. Like what do they need? How do they think? How do they feel about a particular product or solution? What is their actual need? Isn't it? So second phase is engage. Engage in the sense you conduct a lot of interviews. You conduct interviews empathetically. There you have to learn how to ask the right questions. In the sense, like what is required, how it can be solved, uh, what is really required, something like that. So third one is immerse. Immerse means find. You should find ways to get into their shoes. You should look from the perspective of the users, and this is the best way to understand the user's real needs. You have to get immersed with the users. So the empathize tools assume a beginner's mindset. I already mentioned a beginner's mindset allows you to put aside biases and approaches in the sense biases and approaches. You may be biased because otherwise because of your experience you may have set of idea conviction or some approaches you may find quite comfortable in developing something, a software or something like that. But that may not be really required or may not be suitable for solving the particular problem that the user is facing right now. So you have to design with fresh eyes. So that is why a beginner's mindset, even though you may be an experienced person, then you have to adopt a beginner's mindset before you actually start designing or at this empathize stage. And you should ask what, how, why questions. So you ask as many questions as possible with the users to get a clear understanding of their requirements. Conduct interviews with empathy. You try to listen to them, try to actively listen to them rather than imposing your ideas and knowledge with the people. You listen to them, you try to understand their problem, their requirements, then you can have a solution, isn't it? So that is what the stage empathize. The second stage is define. So in the define stage, what you actually do is you state your users needs and problems in a problem statement. You put together the information you have created and gathered during the empathize stage. Empathize stage, you interacted with the users, you interacted with the people, and you collect a lot of information. So then you analyze your observations and synthesize them to define the core problems you and your team have identified. So you define the problem as a problem statement in a human-centered manner. That is a keyword, human-centered manner. So example, instead of defining the problem as your own wish or a need of the company, say for example, we need to increase our food product. A food company, food marketing company, food producing company might say we need to increase our food product market share among young teenage girls by 5%. But instead of that, a much better way to define the problem would be teenage girls need to eat nutritious food in order to thrive or be healthy and grow. So there, even though the same problem, like we want to have increase in our sales and to make more revenues, instead that has been put in a different way. Then right in the first case, it is something like we are selfish or we focus on ourselves, like we want to increase our market share and we want to make profit. But in other way, even though the idea is same, but we put the things in a different way so that others it may look appealing to others. We have put across this issue, like human beings or teenage girls need nutritious food, so naturally they will search for some products. So there comes our product, and they will start buying and our sales will increase, isn't it? So that is a way of defining the problem, making the problem statement. So in the define stage, you will start to progress to the third stage, that is ideate. From define stage, after the definition of the problem statement, after the definition of the problem, you can go to the ideate stage by asking questions. So in this example of food market share increase, so the question would be something like, how might we encourage teenage girls to perform an action that benefits them and also involves your company's food product or service? So the synthesize stage, what you do, your observations about your users from this. So in the defined stage, observations about your users from this from the empathized stage are synthesized. And here you define a meaningful and actionable problem statement. What is actionable problem statement? Whatever you encode as a problem statement should be able to work upon. So people should be able to solve that problem. If you cannot solve a problem, and then there is no use, no. Then there is no use in forming that problem statement. So whenever you form the problem statement, it should be actionable so that you can have some solution. You can devise a strategy to solve that issue. So a great definition of your problem statement, that means a very good problem statement indicates the ideation process would be easy, indicates that ideation process would be easy, and it will go in the right direction because you have defined the problem clearly. There's something like you have diagnosed the disease, so medication would be easier, isn't it? So that is the purpose of defining the problem statement in a clear way. So that's a great definition of a problem statement. So the great definition can be formed only from the empathized stage, only with the design stage, defined stage, isn't it? So if you have identified a great problem statement, then the third stage would be easy. Ideation process stage would be easy, and it will go in the proper direction. So here comes the third stage, that is ideate. So ideate means you need to have a lot of ideas. You need to generate a lot of ideas, a lot of alternatives. So there you will challenge assumptions. So the solid background of knowledge from the first two phases. First two phases in the sense synthesize and define phase. You right now, you in this phase, ideate stage, you think outside the box, look for alternative ways and identify innovative solutions. Brainstorming is used, isn't it? So you have identified the requirement. Now what would be the design? Say for example, for a mobile application, will it be a native mobile application? Is it a hybrid mobile application? So what is a front end, what is a back end? If I use JavaScript, if I use PHP, if I use Python, or if I use something else, isn't it? Or should I use Android, or should I use iOS for my mobile application development? If I use Android, should I use Java or Kotlin for the mobile, for the app development? So these questions, so these are different alternatives, different options. Should I use relational database? Should I use MySQL, or should I use NoSQL or MongoDB? Or isn't it? So these are different questions, different alternatives that could be used during this phase of ideate. So we have different options, isn't it, to solve a particular problem. But each option will have its own merits and demerits that we will have to analyze, isn't it? Then only you can finally, zero in on a particular solution, and you can go ahead with the implementation of that particular solution, that particular proposal, and you can finally have a product delivered, isn't it? So this is the stage ideate. So you have grown to understand your users and their needs in the empathized stage, and you have analyzed and synthesized your observations in the defined stage, and right now you have a clear-cut problem statement. With this solid background, you and your team members can start to think outside the box. Outside the box means you should break conventions. You can break conventions. You can, then only you can have innovative product, because in order to have ideas which nobody else have thought of, you should think outside the box, isn't it? To identify new solutions to the problem statement you have created, and you can start to look for alternative ways of viewing the problem. These alternative ways of solving the problem are generated, are thought of in the ideate stage. There are many ideation techniques: brainstorming, brainwriting, worst possible idea, scamber. It's an acronym. So S stands for substitute, C for combine, A for adapt, M for modify, P for put to another use, and E for eliminate, and R for reverse. So they are all ideation techniques. Brainstorming is nothing but you discuss with your friends and discuss with your teammates. Brainwrite is also something like that, where you in fact write whatever idea comes in your mind. Each person writes and pass it to your friends, and they will add their own ideas, and finally they will have better idea. So worst possible idea means no idea is bad. That's the concept followed. Everyone, whenever the team member says something, no, it is taken care of and it's noted down, and it is given due weightage. So to stimulate free thinking and to expand the problem space, you need to have ideation techniques. So it's important to get as many ideas or problem statement as possible at the beginning of this ideation stage. From this pool of ideas that have been generated in the ideation phase, you can build prototypes to test with the users. So the meaning of the word ideate is to transform from identifying a transition from identifying problems to exploring solutions, transforming the problems to solutions. That is what ideate. You have a problem, you have some solution devised or identified. That is ideate. Ideate stage involves challenging assumptions. Identify the assumptions you have about the product you are building. So identifying the assumptions. Say for example, in our mobile application, we have used an encryption algorithm. Say for any encryption algorithm. So you need to ask something like, why have I chosen that particular encryption algorithm? Is it because that I am quite comfortable, or the coding is easy, or I have used the same algorithm in my previous project, or is this algorithm the best suited one for the current situation? So if the second one is the answer, we can go ahead with that. Otherwise, you have to rethink on the selection of algorithm. So that is the example. Identify the assumption. So you have assumed that okay, this is algorithm by default, but what is that the best one? Yes. If it is yes, go ahead. Otherwise, change it. So challenge these assumptions. Are they fixed because they are crucial aspects, or because we have been accustomed to them? Isn't it? So very important stuff. If the empathy stage wasn't done, well done, and there are many things assumed about the users and their context. If the empathize stage, and that is where we try to get them get maximum information. If that was not done clearly, probably you will have vague problem statement and thereby a vague solution, isn't it? So stage 4 is prototype. Start to create solution. This is an experimental phase. The aim is to identify the best possible solution. A number of inexpensive scale down versions of product or specific features found within the product. So prototype and actual product, the difference is in the prototype you will have less number of features, or only important features you will try to experiment. So in the software development, in we will first design an important module or important parts, important features. Say particular algorithm, we have designed an important algorithm, and that algorithm we will check. And if the algorithm is working, we'll go ahead with that. The user interface or some database, those things maybe may eliminate for the time being, but in the actual product development they will also be taken care of. But for the time being, what is the essential parameter that we would like to test, that we will implement. Maybe a cryptographic algorithm, we want to check the performance of a cryptographic algorithm, how it works. So we will implement that and we will check it, isn't it, with some sample data. So that is prototype. The design team will now produce a number of inexpensive scale down versions. So that is why it is scaled down. It is not with the actual scale of the project which we are going to develop, but only limited features. So specific features are there within the prototype. Even paper prototype, sometimes you'll have in the one of the last classes, one of the previous classes, we have seen mock-up and model and prototype. Mock-up means paper, cardboard items. Using those things, you can build some design. There you can test some of the features in the proposed design. So if you can do that, you can even think of paper prototyping. Otherwise, you will have a miniature model which is implemented in the real scenario, and you test and take feedback, and you redesign your product or solution. So that is what prototype. This is not a complete solution. In no way it is complete, but only limited features, only essential features we will implement and take the feedback. If the prototype is working correctly, okay, fine. Otherwise, if the prototype is not working correctly, we will identify why it is not working correctly. If something needs to be changed in the design, we will go back to the ideate stage. So that is why this design thinking is not a linear approach. It's a non-linear, it's iterative. N number of times you can repeat prototyping, ideate, prototyping, synthesize, define, or prototype testing. N number of times we can repeat. That is why it is iterative process. Prototypes developed may be shared and tested within the team itself, or within other departments, or on a small group of people outside the design. Anybody who trusts would give you a real feedback. You can give the prototype and ask for feedback, no issue. That is how you take feedback. That is how you define, you design a better product or best product. This is an experimental phase, and the aim is to identify the best solution for each of the problems identified during the first three stages. The solutions are implemented within the prototypes, and after testing the prototype, they may be either accepted, they may be, or there may be a chance for improvement. In that case, you will go back to the previous stages or re-examined, and some errors or some mistakes are identified, go back to previous stages, or it may be totally rejected on the basis of the user's experience. Then you start from the scratch again. You start from the, I'd say, empathize stage again, with more clarity on the user's requirements. Then you design the product subsequently. So by the end of this stage, you have better idea of the constraints inherent to the product and the problems that are present, and have a clear view of how real users would behave, think, and feel when interacting with the end product. That is the purpose of prototype stage. Now, last stage is test stage. So here, try your solutions out. That's what designers or evaluators rigorously test the complete product using the best solutions identified during the prototyping phase. Teams often use the results to redefine one or more further problems. So that is also possible. That is why, again, this the process or overall design thinking process is iterative. So you can return to previous stages to make further iterations, because after testing you found out that one feature is not working. So what should do? That was a misconception that we have done. So that was a wrong idea. That was a wrong selection of algorithm, wrong selection of platform, wrong selection of tool. What should we do? Go back to the previous stages and redefine, modify, and alter and refine to find or roll out alternative solutions. So that is possible. That is, these things are possible in the design thinking approach. Overall, these stages are different modes which contribute to the entire design project. The different stages of the design thinking are different modes which contribute to the entire design project rather than a sequential steps. Your goal throughout this process is to gain the deepest understanding of the users and what their ideal solution product would be. Only when you have a better understanding of the users, you can think of a better product or successful product, because ultimately our aim is to launch a product into the market, so that that will be a huge success, and our revenues will be, largely increased. That is the purpose of designing. That is the purpose of designing product, at least in the market, at least in the competitive world. Understanding these 5 stages of design thinking will empower anyone to apply the design thinking methods in our companies, because the design problem may be within the company, within the countries, or even on the scale of our planet. I mentioned about the issue of global warming. So that may be on the scale of our planet. So it can be applied to any problem on any scale. So the approach is important, to understand the approaches and to understand the various stages, how various stages are connected, how we move from one stage to the another stage, why we call it as a non-linear process, why we call it as an iterative process, why we call it as a flexible process. That is important. That is important. It is important to understand the characteristics of this design thinking. The non-linear nature of design thinking. One stage leads to the next stage with a logical conclusion at user testing. That is called linear, isn't it? But in the case of design thinking, it is not always like that. It's not always one stage leads to the next stage, because you may skip the next stage, and you may, because from the ideation directly you may skip the prototype. You may go to test phase, or from the test phase you may go to empathize stage. It is in any order it is possible to explore different stages. In practice, the process is carried out in a more flexible and non-linear fashion. Different groups within the design team may conduct more than one stage concurrently. Even that is also possible, because one team in the design team, one group of people in the design team may work on different stages concurrently. Say empathizing with the users. So we have some idea, because it's an iterative process. In the first round of empathizing with them, we have identified some issues. Then we started to develop a prototype. While the prototype is on, you can have further the discussion with the users, so that the result of the discussion can be fed to the prototype stage, and you can improve the product. So parallelly you can save time also, isn't it? So The results from the testing phase may reveal some insights about users, obviously, which in turn may lead to another brainstorming session if required. So that is called ideate phase again, or the development of a new prototype. So after testing, when we identify that something is missing or something is working fine or some changes required, then you can go back to ideate phase or prototype phase to have a better design, isn't it? To have better idea, better alternatives. If one alternative is not working, go back to the ideate stage and take the second alternative and start developing the prototype for that alternative and test it. And if that is working, yes, go and finally implement that and launch in the market. Otherwise, go back to ideate or synthesize or define stage and repeat the overall process until you get a satisfied product, until you get a design that you have been actually searching for, isn't it? So that is the whole idea of design thinking. So it's important to note that these 5 stages are not always sequential, different modes that contribute to a project other than sequential steps. They are actually, but the central idea behind each stage remains the same. Every project will involve activities specific to the product. Say, for example, in a software development or nowadays, coronavirus and its vaccines are under development. So this vaccine is also, it's a design. So it will also go through different stages: synthesize, empathize, define, or prototype and testing. Or it may be the development of a new car, new model of a car, or it may be development of a new software. The stages remain the same: empathize, define, ideate, prototype and test. But in the case of a software, the prototype of the software is tested. In the case of a car development, prototype of car is tested. In the case of software development, we interact with the users to understand the requirements for software. In the development of a car, you interact with the users of a prospective users of a car to understand what they really need from this new model, isn't it? What are their expectations of a new model of a car? So empathize stage remains the same, ideate stage remains the same, define stage remains the same, because the problem statement define stage remains the same means the purpose of the define stage. Purpose of the define stage is to form a well-defined user-centric problem statement. So in the in the design of a new car, also in the design of a software, the purpose remains the same. There we define a well-defined problem statement. So, but the area, the product is different, but the central idea behind each stage remains the same. So that is the meaning of design thinking. These stages might be switched, conducted concurrently and repeated several times, and finally to zero in on the best possible solution. So this creates sometimes a perpetual loop in which the designers continue to gain new insights, develop new way of viewing the product and its possible uses, and develop a far more profound understanding of the users and the problems they face. So the takeaway of this class is, in a sense, the design thinking process is an iterative, flexible, and focused on collaboration between designers and users, with an emphasis on bringing ideas to life based on how real users think, feel, and behave. Design thinking tackles complex problems by empathizing, that is, by understanding the human needs involved, by defining, that is, by reframing and defining the problem in a human-centric ways, by ideating, that is, by creating many ideas in ideation sessions, by prototyping, by adopting a hands-on approach in prototyping, and finally, through testing. In the testing phase, we develop a prototype and test it for the user requirements. So these are the various stages of design thinking. So to sum up, design thinking is an important concept in design and engineering. The different stages are very important, and it's a non-linear approach. It's an iterative process that can be done. It's not only that designers adopt this, anybody, it can be applied to any problem in any field. So and different universities are offering this course, and different companies are adopting how already they have already adopted this design thinking approach in their innovative processes. So it is important for us, the computer science engineers, to understand how design thinking works, so that we can think of a better or we can understand the user's requirements in a systematic manner, so that in a better manner, so that we can come up with some really innovative solutions, so that the users are happy and our products will be a successful one. So that's all for today. Thank you.